She lived in a small, crumbling house at the edge of town. The walls were thin, the roof leaked when it rained, and the floorboards creaked with every step. But this was her home, the only home she had ever known since her parents passed away years ago. Life had never been easy for her, yet she had learned to survive with a quiet strength that most people could not see. She woke up early every morning before the sun even touched the sky, to help with the small chores that kept the house from falling apart entirely. There was no warmth in the air, no laughter to fill the empty spaces. Only the soft sound of sweeping brooms and the distant hum of the waking town. Her stepmother was there too. But she was not like the mothers the girl had once known. She was harsh and cold, often speaking in sharp, cutting tones that made the girl flinch. Every small mistake brought a scolding, and every day felt like a test she could never pass. Yet, the girl never complained. She had learned early that words could hurt, but silence could survive. She moved quietly, did her chores quickly, and made herself small, hoping not to draw attention. Still, the stepmother's eyes were always on her, measuring, judging, and finding faults that seemed to exist only in her imagination. The girl's life was not without small joys, though they were fleeting. Sometimes she would sit by the cracked window and watch the sun rise, painting the sky in colors she could not name but felt deeply. She would imagine a world beyond the broken streets, a place where laughter was constant and food was plentiful. Sometimes she would help the neighbors with small tasks in exchange for a piece of bread or a few coins. These small acts of kindness connected her to the world beyond her home and reminded her that not all people were cruel or uncaring. School was another challenge. The girl loved learning, but she often went without proper meals and clothes that fit. Her books were old and worn, and her shoes had holes that let in the rain. Still, she attended every day, determined to grasp knowledge wherever she could. She wanted to believe that education was her ticket to a better life, a life where she would never again feel so small and helpless. But each day at home reminded her that dreams alone could not fill an empty stomach or protect her. From harsh hands, her stepmother's cruelty had many faces. Sometimes it was the harsh words and sharp looks, other times it was neglect. Meals were often meager, portions divided unfairly, with the girl getting the smallest share. Warmth was rare, and hugs or gentle words were almost non-existent. She learned to cover her hunger with water and to hide the bruises left from a careless push or a reprimanding hand. But even in her suffering, she carried herself with quiet dignity. She never lashed out, never begged, never cried loudly. Her resilience was invisible, a secret strength she kept close to her heart. Neighbors sometimes noticed the girl's suffering. Some shook their heads and muttered, wishing they could help, but fear or shame kept them silent. They watched as the girl moved like a shadow through the streets, carrying her small bundle of chores and burdens. They saw her kindness when she helped others, even when she had so little herself. She would tend to the neighbor's sick pets, carry water for the elderly, or help a younger child with homework, always without asking for anything in return. Her spirit remained unbroken, even when her body and heart were tested daily. Despite the hardships, the girl clung to hope. She whispered small prayers into the night, wishing for someone who could see her worth, someone who could offer more than just words. She dreamed of a life where she could laugh freely, where her hands would not ache from endless chores, where her stomach would be full and her heart unburdened by fear. She knew that the world outside her small home was vast and unpredictable, but somewhere, she believed, there was a place where she belonged. But life at home continued, each day blending into the next, with little change. The stepmother's eyes were always sharp, always calculating, and the girl could sense the tension growing. The stepmother would whisper to herself, pacing the small rooms, muttering about money, about the burdens of life, about how the girl was too much to handle. The girl would shrink back, pretending to be busy, hoping that if she were invisible, the stepmother's anger would pass her by. Yet even in this harsh environment, the girl found small ways to survive. She found comfort in simple routines, like sweeping the floors or washing the few clothes they owned. She took solace in the quiet moments before the world awoke and the soft morning light that filtered through dusty windows. These small things were her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe and remember that she was still human. Still capable of feeling joy, even if it was fleeting. She was often tired, her body aching from the constant work, but she never let it show. She moved through the house silently, careful not to disturb, careful not to provoke another harsh word or look. Her life was a delicate balance, a daily struggle to maintain peace in a home where love was absent and cruelty was constant. Yet she endured. She endured because she had no other choice, but also because she believed in something greater, something beyond the walls of her home and the reach of her stepmother's control. Sometimes, when the world felt unbearably heavy, she would escape into her imagination. She would picture a world where kindness was abundant, where people looked out for one another, where no child went hungry or feared those meant to care for them. She imagined herself walking freely through fields of flowers, laughing without fear, sharing meals with those who truly cared. These dreams sustained her, giving her the strength to face another day, to continue the chores, to endure the harsh words and cruel treatment, to remain quietly hopeful in the midst of hardship. And so, each day passed, a rhythm of struggle and silent endurance. The girl moved through her life with quiet resilience, carrying burdens far heavier than anyone should bear. She did not ask for sympathy, nor did she seek attention. She simply continued, surviving, hoping, dreaming, and waiting for a chance to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. Deep down, she knew that her life could change, that someone could come into her world and offer her the chance she had long prayed for. Until then, she remained quietly enduring, holding on to hope, and believing that even in the darkest circumstances, a glimmer of light could find its way to her. The days in the small house began to feel heavier. The girl had grown accustomed to her chores, to the sharp words and cold stares. Yet lately there was a tension in the air that made her uneasy. Her stepmother was no longer just harsh or impatient. She had begun to plan. The girl did not know exactly what was coming, but she could feel the shift. The sense that she was no longer just a burden to be tolerated, but a problem to be solved in some secret and frightening way. The stepmother whispered to herself often, pacing the rooms late at night, her words laced with frustration and greed. Sometimes she would glance at the girl in a way that made the girl shrink back. Sensing the danger that seemed to lurk in the shadows, it started with small changes. The stepmother began inviting strangers into the house when the girl was told to stay in her room. She could hear muffled conversations, strange voices talking about money, arrangements, plans that made no sense to a child, but sent shivers down her spine. At first, she tried to ignore it, convincing herself that she must be imagining things. Perhaps the stepmother was just making business arrangements, but the feeling of unease grew with every passing day. Each whispered word seemed sharper, each glance more calculating, and she began to feel that her life might be in danger in ways she could not fully understand. The stepmother's cruelty intensified in other ways too. Meals became even smaller, and the girl was often sent to the market with little money to buy basic necessities. If she returned with less than expected, or if something went wrong, she was met with anger. Harsh words flew like knives, and she learned to avoid looking her stepmother in the eye, to keep her head down, to move silently so as not to provoke further wrath. Despite this, she continued to work hard, to do the chores, to keep the house in some semblance of order. Each day felt like walking a tightrope, balancing between survival and the invisible threat that seemed to grow with every passing moment. One afternoon, the girl overheard a conversation that made her heart pound. She had been sweeping the floor when the stepmother spoke to a man she had never seen before. The words were sharp, transactional, cruel. The man was asking about her life, about what she could do. And the stepmother spoke as if she were not even a human being. The girl pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself invisible. But the sound of her own heartbeat seemed deafening. She realized then that the whispers, the pacing, the strange glances were all part of a plan that she did not want to imagine. Fear gripped her, but she held her ground, keeping silent. Knowing that speaking could make things worse, days passed and the tension grew. The stepmother became more secretive, more controlling. She began locking certain rooms, moving items around, and creating rules that made the girl's life even more constrained. The girl learned to navigate the house carefully, memorizing the stepmother's moods, the timing of her movements, and the tone of her voice. She became more alert, more cautious, watching for signs of danger, but also growing sadder each day. She loved no one in the house, and yet she still hoped that perhaps something could change, that somehow someone would see her as she was. Not as a problem or burden, the girl tried to confide in the neighbors, to ask for advice or help, but fear held her back. The world outside her house seemed both familiar and distant. She knew that most people had their own struggles, and she did not want to be a burden or attract attention that could worsen her situation. So she stayed quiet, watching, listening, waiting for something to happen. Her dreams became a place of escape, where she could imagine a life free from fear, free from hunger, free from the stepmother's cruel intentions. One evening, the stepmother made her intentions clear in a way that could not be misunderstood. She summoned the girl into the small living area and spoke about the family's debts, about how she could not afford to care for her any longer. Her words were cold and calculating, filled with anger and greed. She spoke of possibilities, of arrangements that involved money and promises, and the girl's heart sank. She realized then that her worst fears were not unfounded. The stepmother's plan was unfolding, and the girl was at the center of it. She tried to stay calm, to hide the panic that threatened to rise. But tears welled up in her eyes, and she felt a crushing weight on her chest. The girl spent that night awake, thinking of ways to survive, ways to escape, but the house was small, and the stepmother's control was everywhere. There seemed to be no safe place, no ally, no one to turn to. Yet amidst the fear and despair, a small spark of determination grew. She could not change her stepmother, she could not undo the past, but she could hold on to hope. She resolved to be careful, to watch and wait, and to find a moment when she could act. Survival had become her only mission, and she embraced it with quiet courage. Over the next few days, the stepmother's behavior grew even more erratic. She spoke in hushed tones to visitors, made secret trips to the market, and became impatient with the girl's every move. The girl learned to read her expressions, to anticipate her moods, to adapt her own behavior to avoid confrontation. She moved like a shadow through the house, invisible but aware, listening, watching, learning. Each day felt like a test of endurance, each moment a challenge to her courage and resilience. Despite the fear, the girl found small ways to assert her humanity. She helped a stray cat find food, gave water to a tired neighbor, and tended to a young child who had nowhere else to turn. These small acts of kindness were her rebellion against the cruelty around her. They reminded her that she was more than the stepmother's burden. She still had compassion, that she still had the ability to care and love. These moments became her anchor, keeping her spirit alive amidst the growing darkness. As the plan of the stepmother neared its climax, the girl felt the weight of anticipation and fear pressing down on her. She did not know when or how the stepmother's intentions would come to fruition, but she sensed that the moment was approaching. Her senses were heightened, her mind alert, every sound and shadow carrying potential danger. She moved through the house with care, her heart racing with every step, her mind searching for a way to survive. She could feel that her life was about to change, that the cruelty she had endured for so long was reaching a critical point, and that the outcome could determine her future forever. One morning, the stepmother gave her a task that made the girl's heart sink. She was to go to the market with a small sum of money and meet a stranger who would take her somewhere else. The girl's instincts screamed that something was wrong, that this could be the moment the stepmother's cruel plan was set into motion. Fear and confusion battled within her, but she knew she had to appear obedient. She moved carefully, memorizing the path, observing the people around her, and preparing herself for what might come next. Every step was cautious, every glance vigilant, as she tried to anticipate danger while holding on to the small thread of hope that had kept her alive for so long. By the time she reached the appointed meeting place, the girl's heart was pounding. The streets seemed larger and more intimidating than ever before. She saw the stranger waiting, and a cold wave of fear washed over her. She did not know what would happen next, only that she had to survive, that she had to find a way to endure whatever came. She clutched the small bundle of money and looked around, her eyes searching for any sign of help, any friendly face, any chance that she could escape the cruel plan that had shadowed her life for so long. The girl's mind raced with possibilities, each more frightening than the last. She knew she had to remain calm, to think clearly, to hold on to hope. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for whatever was about to come. She could feel the weight of the stepmother's plan pressing down on her, the anticipation of the unknown mixing with fear and determination. This was a pivotal moment, a test of courage and endurance, and she resolved to face it with as much strength as she could muster. The cruel plan was in motion, but the girl's spirit, though battered, was not broken. She was ready to confront the challenges ahead, to find a way to survive, and to hope that fate had a hand in her life that would guide her. To safety and a new beginning, the girl walked carefully through the crowded streets, the small bundle of money clutched tightly in her hands. Every step made her heart race, and every stranger's glance sent a shiver down her spine. She tried to focus on her surroundings, on the shops, on the sounds of the town, but her mind kept returning to the fear that had been growing inside her for weeks. She knew that her stepmother's plan was dangerous, that the man she was supposed to meet could be cruel or worse, and yet she had no choice but to keep moving forward. There was no turning back, no safe place to run. Only the path she had been forced to take as she approached the appointed meeting place. She noticed a man standing nearby who did not fit in with the bustling crowd. He was older, well-dressed, and carried himself with a quiet authority. His eyes scanned the street carefully, observing the people around him with an intensity that made the girl pause. Something about the way he looked at the world, the way he noticed details others overlooked, made her feel both nervous and oddly reassured. She had never seen someone who seemed so aware, so deliberate, and yet so calm. She wondered what he was doing there, why he was watching, and if he would notice her, if he would see the fear in her eyes. The man's gaze finally settled on the girl, and for a moment their eyes met. She froze, unsure of what to do, but he did not approach her aggressively. Instead, he observed silently, as if trying to understand her situation without causing alarm. There was something in his expression that suggested he could see more than the surface, that he could sense the unease that surrounded her, the tension in her body, and the weight she carried silently. The girl felt a flicker of hope, a small possibility that perhaps someone might intervene, that she might not have to face what came next alone. The stranger's attention drew the girl's curiosity. She noticed that he was not speaking to anyone around him, not making a show, just watching. His presence seemed intentional, deliberate, as if he were waiting for something to unfold. The girl's instincts told her to stay cautious, to continue with the task she had been given, but she could not ignore the feeling that this man might somehow be different from the others she had encountered. She took a tentative step closer, keeping her eyes on him while trying to appear calm. Though her hands shook slightly, suddenly the man approached, but not in a threatening way. He spoke in a gentle, firm voice, asking simple questions about where she was going and if she was all right. The girl's heart raced, unsure whether she could trust him, unsure whether speaking would put her in more danger. Yet something about his tone, the kindness beneath the authority, made her answer cautiously. She told him a few small, harmless truths, careful not to reveal too much, and yet the man listened attentively. Nodding slightly, as if he understood more than she was saying, the girl felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. She had been alone for so long, faced with the stepmother's cruelty and the uncertainty of strangers, that any kindness, any attention, felt overwhelming. The man did not ask for money or favors, did not try to push her or force her to do anything. He simply observed, asked gentle questions, and gave her space to respond. In that moment, the girl realized that not everyone she met wanted to hurt her. There were people in the world who could see her as she was, vulnerable but strong, afraid but enduring, and treat her with dignity and respect. The man's presence did more than offer immediate relief. It made the girl feel seen. For the first time in weeks, she felt that someone truly noticed her. Her fear, her courage, her quiet determination to survive. She began to trust him cautiously at first, then more openly. As he asked questions about her life, about her family, about the challenges she faced, The girl spoke carefully, revealing just enough to convey her situation without putting herself in danger. The man listened with patience and care, absorbing every word, every hesitation, every sign of fear, and understanding the gravity of her circumstances. As they spoke, the girl realized that she was not alone, that there was someone who could potentially intervene in her life, someone who had the power to change the course of events that had been set in motion by her stepmother's cruelty. The man did not act rashly or impulsively. He considered each detail, each nuance, weighing his options and planning his next steps. The girl watched him closely, sensing that he was someone who took responsibility seriously, someone who would not ignore a child in need. His calm confidence gave her hope. She began to feel a sense of safety she had not known in years. The stranger's questions led the girl to reveal small details about her home life, carefully omitting anything that could endanger her further. She spoke of her daily chores, the harsh words, the fear that filled the house, and the uncertainty she felt about what was coming next. The man nodded thoughtfully, never interrupting, never judging, simply absorbing the information. His presence was steady, grounding, and the girl felt a weight lift slightly from her chest. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone understood her predicament, that she was not invisible, and that there might be a way out. The man then asked if she was hungry, if she needed rest, if she had a safe place to go. The questions were simple, practical, yet filled with concern. The girl nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth without revealing too much. She had been hungry many times, tired from endless chores, and longing for even a moment of safety. The man offered her something small, a drink, a snack, a place to sit, and she accepted cautiously, grateful for the kindness but still wary of danger. She felt a flicker of hope, a fragile sense that perhaps someone could help her escape the cruel plan that had shadowed her life. As they spoke further, the man explained that he wanted to understand her situation fully before taking action. He did not promise immediate solutions or grand gestures, but he made it clear that he would not ignore her plight. The girl listened, her heart racing, realizing that she had found someone willing to intervene, someone who could potentially stop the stepmother's plan from unfolding. The conversation gave her a sense of empowerment she had never known, a feeling that her life was not entirely in the hands of those who wished her harm. The encounter continued with the man observing the surroundings, noting details that the girl had overlooked in her fear. He noticed the strangers who lingered nearby, the signs of tension in the street, and the subtle cues of danger that the girl had learned to read but could not fully articulate. His awareness reassured the girl, making her feel that she was not alone, that there was someone capable and vigilant looking out for her. The man's careful attention to detail demonstrated his experience and commitment to ensuring her safety. As the meeting drew to a close, the man made a quiet promise to the girl. He would take steps to ensure that she was protected, that she would not be left at the mercy of the stepmother's cruel plan. He did not make empty promises or dramatic declarations. His words were simple, firm, and filled with determination. The girl felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that someone was actively working to safeguard her. Someone who saw her as more than a burden, more than a child in danger, but as a human being worthy of care and protection. Walking away from the encounter, the girl felt a mixture of emotions: hope, relief, and lingering fear. She knew that the stepmother's plan was still in motion, that danger had not disappeared, but she also knew that there was a force in the world willing to stand against it. The encounter had shifted something within her. She felt stronger, more vigilant, and more prepared to face what lay ahead. The knowledge that someone could intervene, that someone could change the course of her life, filled her with cautious optimism. Returning home, the girl moved carefully. Aware that the stepmother might notice a change, might grow suspicious, she continued her chores, maintained her silence, and kept her interactions minimal, all the while holding on to the fragile hope born from the encounter with the man. Each day became a balancing act, managing fear, maintaining composure, and awaiting the moment when intervention could secure her safety. The girl's resilience, tempered by the encounter, grew stronger, and she began to see the possibility of a life beyond the shadow of cruelty and fear. The encounter with the man became a turning point in the girl's life. It gave her not only hope, but also a renewed sense of agency. She understood that she could survive, that she could endure, and that there were people in the world who could act with kindness and courage when faced with injustice. The memory of his calm presence, his careful attention, and his promise to protect her became a source of strength, a guiding light through the darkness that had enveloped her for so long. She knew that the steps ahead would require patience, vigilance, and courage, but she was no longer entirely alone. The girl had returned home, her mind filled with the memory of the man she had met earlier. His calm, observing presence had left an impression that she could not shake. She moved through the house with her usual caution, completing her chores silently, avoiding any misstep that might draw her stepmother's ire. Yet inside her, a small flame of hope had been lit, and it made her more alert, more determined. She felt a strange mixture of fear and anticipation, knowing that something was about to change, but not fully understanding how or when. The next morning the man returned, arriving quietly at the edge of the street, where she usually walked. This time, there was no hesitation in his approach. He called her over gently, with a tone that carried authority, but also safety. The girl froze for a moment, her heart racing, but she obeyed, stepping closer to him. He smiled slightly, as if acknowledging the courage it had taken for her to come, and began to speak softly but firmly, asking about the stepmother, the house, and the plans she had overheard. The girl's voice trembled slightly, but she answered as honestly as she could without revealing too much about the immediate dangers as she spoke. The man listened attentively, nodding occasionally, and taking note of the critical details. He asked follow-up questions, clarifying points that were vague and ensuring he understood the risks the girl faced. His presence was steady, calm, and deliberate, giving her the first real sense that someone was actively trying to protect her. She had never felt this level of care before. His attention was not just for show. It was purposeful, filled with the intention to act, to intervene, to change her fate. Once he had gathered enough information, he made a plan. The girl watched as he calmly outlined steps to ensure her safety, explaining each action in simple words she could understand. He would contact the necessary authorities, create a situation where the stepmother could no longer carry out her cruel plan, and provide immediate care for the girl. His voice was steady, and she could hear the determination behind every word. It was not a promise of wealth or comfort, but a promise of protection, and that was enough to give her courage. The girl followed him quietly as they moved to a safer location, a place where she could be protected without alerting the stepmother prematurely. She felt a mix of fear and relief, not fully knowing what would happen next, but trusting the man's calm authority. He did not rush, did not act recklessly. Instead, he moved with precision, ensuring that each step was measured and thoughtful. She noticed how he observed the surroundings, the people passing by, and even the smallest details that could indicate danger. It was clear that he was experienced, capable, and committed to seeing the situation through safely. During this time, the girl was given food, water, and a place to rest. The man did not coddle her, nor did he speak in a patronizing tone. He treated her with respect, acknowledging her fears and her resilience. For the first time in a long while, the girl felt seen as a human being, not as a burden or a commodity. This simple recognition strengthened her resolve, giving her a sense of dignity that had been missing for years. She began to feel a glimmer of trust, cautiously opening up about her life, her dreams, and her fears as the day progressed. The man took careful steps to expose the stepmother's intentions without causing unnecessary conflict or danger. He contacted the relevant authorities discreetly, providing clear and precise information about the risks the girl faced. His approach was methodical, designed to ensure that the girl would be removed from harm without alarming the stepmother or putting her in immediate danger. The girl watched closely, learning that courage could take many forms, and that careful planning could be as powerful as direct action. The stepmother, meanwhile, grew increasingly suspicious. She noticed the girl's absence and began asking questions. But she did not know where the girl had gone or who was involved. The man anticipated her reactions, creating a plan that would prevent her from interfering while ensuring the girl's safety. The girl felt a sense of relief, knowing that someone was protecting her and thinking several steps ahead to counteract the stepmother's cruelty. It was a feeling she had never known, the sense that she was not alone, that there was someone with the power and will to intervene on her behalf. The girl was brought to a secure location where she could rest and recover. She was given proper meals, a clean place to sleep, and the chance to feel safe for the first time in years. The man did not flaunt wealth or status. His concern was solely for her well-being. He spoke to her gently, encouraging her to express her feelings and fears, and listened patiently as she recounted her experiences. For the first time, the girl felt that her voice mattered, that her experiences were valid, and that she could trust someone to act in her best interest. Over the next few hours, the man continued to coordinate with the authorities, ensuring that the stepmother's plan could no longer reach the girl. He provided evidence, explained the context, and made certain that the girl would be legally protected. The girl watched in awe as the situation, which had seemed hopeless for so long, began to shift. The sense of danger that had weighed on her for weeks was slowly lifting, replaced by a cautious optimism that she could finally escape the constant fear and uncertainty that had defined her life. The man also took the time to explain to the girl that her courage had played a significant role in her survival. He praised her vigilance, her ability to observe and endure, and her quiet strength in the face of adversity. His words were not exaggerated or empty. They were sincere and grounded in reality. The girl felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before, a recognition that her own actions, her resilience, and her determination had helped bring her to this point. It was a turning moment, reinforcing the idea that she was capable, worthy, and deserving of protection and care. As the authorities intervened, the stepmother's plan began to unravel. She was confronted with evidence of her intentions and faced consequences she could not escape. The girl, meanwhile, remained in a safe environment, gradually feeling the weight of fear lift from her shoulders. She realized that she could breathe again, that she could sleep without dread, and that she was finally free from the immediate threat that had loomed over her life for so long. The relief was overwhelming. Tears of both exhaustion and joy filled her eyes. The man continued to support her through this period, ensuring that she had access to basic needs, education, and emotional care. He did not seek recognition or praise for his actions. His concern was entirely for the girl's well-being and future. Through his careful and compassionate approach, the girl began to understand that there were people in the world who could act decisively and kindly, who could intervene in moments of crisis, and who could provide protection and guidance when it was most needed. In the days that followed, the girl slowly started to regain her sense of normalcy. She began to feel safe in her surroundings, to trust in the adults who had stepped in to help her, and to dream about a future that was no longer overshadowed by fear and cruelty. The man remained a steady presence, providing guidance, encouragement, and support, while allowing her the space to heal and adapt to the new reality. Each day brought small victories, from learning to trust again to enjoying simple pleasures that had been denied to her for so long. The girl's journey was far from over, but this turning point marked a significant shift in her life. She had survived the stepmother's cruelty, endured the fear and uncertainty, and now had the opportunity to build a new path forward. The experience had taught her resilience, vigilance, and the importance of hope, but it also introduced her to the power of kindness, decisive action, and human compassion. She realized that one person's choice, one thoughtful intervention, could change the course of a life forever. Through this experience, the girl learned that she was not powerless, that her voice, her courage, and her actions mattered. She also learned that there were people in the world willing to act with integrity and care, people who could recognize injustice and respond with the necessary steps to ensure safety and protection. The man's decisive choice had not only saved her from immediate danger, but it also opened the door to a future where she could grow, learn, and thrive without the constant shadow of fear. As she began to settle into this new chapter, the girl felt a profound sense of gratitude. She knew that her life could have taken a very different turn, that without intervention, the stepmother's cruel plan might have succeeded. The reality of her survival, the protection she now experienced, and the opportunities before her became a source of strength and inspiration. She understood that her resilience, combined with the thoughtful and compassionate actions of the man, had created a turning point that would define her life for years to come. The girl woke up one morning with a sense of calm she had never felt before. The small fear that had clung to her like a shadow for years was finally fading. She stretched in the warm sunlight that filled the room, feeling the comfort of a safe space for the first time in her life. There were no sharp words, no harsh hands, no cold stares. Instead, she felt the presence of people who genuinely cared about her, who had taken steps to ensure her well-being and safety. This new chapter in her life was beginning, and with it came the first real sense of hope she had experienced in a long time. The days that followed were filled with small but meaningful changes. She was given proper meals, clothing that fit, and a clean place to sleep. She no longer had to hide or be cautious with every move. The fear that had dominated her existence for so long began to melt away as she adjusted to her new reality. There was still a long journey ahead, but for the first time, she felt that her life was in her own hands, that she could make choices, and that there were people around her who would guide and protect her without judgment. Education became an important part of her daily routine. She was provided with books, writing materials, and access to teachers who could help her catch up on the lessons she had missed. Learning, which had always been a source of joy despite her hardships, now became a tool for empowerment. The girl approached her studies with dedication, eager to absorb knowledge and expand her understanding of the world. The challenges of the past no longer seemed like insurmountable obstacles. Instead, they became motivation to build a brighter future. At first, the girl found it difficult to trust fully. Years of cruelty and neglect had left deep scars. She had learned to rely only on herself, to hide her feelings, and to expect the worst from others. But over time, she began to recognize the genuine care of those around her. The man who had intervened in her life continued to provide guidance, not in a controlling way, but as a supportive presence who encouraged her independence and self-confidence. This helped her gradually rebuild her sense of trust in people. The girl also began to explore her own interests and talents. She discovered a love for art and writing, using these as outlets to express her emotions and experiences. Through drawing and storytelling, she processed the pain of her past, the fear she had endured, and the hope that now filled her heart. These creative outlets became an essential part of her healing, allowing her to see the world not just as a place of hardship, but as a space where beauty, possibility, and self-expression could exist. Over time, she started forming relationships with others who treated her with respect and kindness. She met children and adults who offered friendship, guidance, and mentorship. These connections were built on mutual respect and care, and they helped her understand that she was capable of forming healthy, supportive relationships. The sense of community and belonging that she experienced was new and invigorating, and it reinforced the idea that she was no longer alone in facing the challenges of life. The memories of her stepmother's cruelty remained. They no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of the strength and resilience she had developed. She often reflected on how far she had come from the days of fear and uncertainty to a life where she felt safe and valued. Each small achievement, whether learning a new skill, completing a project, or simply feeling at peace in her surroundings, became a milestone in her journey toward healing and self-discovery. The man who had intervened continued to play a supportive role in her life, ensuring that she had access to opportunities that would help her grow. He emphasized the importance of education, self-reliance, and compassion. He also made it clear that she had the freedom to make her own choices, to pursue her interests, and to shape her future. This balance of guidance and autonomy allowed the girl to develop confidence and a sense of agency, which had been absent for so long. As she grew stronger emotionally and mentally, the girl also began to think about her future in practical terms. She considered careers, hobbies, and paths that would allow her to contribute to the world in meaningful ways. The possibility of helping others, especially those who had faced similar hardships, became an important part of her aspirations. She wanted to use her experiences to inspire and support others, transforming the pain of her past into a source of strength and guidance for those in need. The girl's daily life gradually became structured around learning, creativity, and self-improvement. She developed routines that balanced study, rest, and recreation, allowing her to experience a sense of normalcy and stability. Each day offered small victories, from mastering a new concept in school to completing a drawing that expressed her feelings. These accomplishments reinforced her sense of self-worth and helped her internalize the belief that she was capable of achieving her goals. The community around her also played a crucial role in her recovery. Teachers, mentors, and peers provided support, encouragement, and positive reinforcement. Their guidance helped her navigate challenges, solve problems, and develop social skills that had been underdeveloped due to her isolated and fearful childhood. The sense of belonging and mutual respect within this supportive network strengthened her resilience and reinforced the idea that she was valued and capable. Girl also began to participate in activities that fostered leadership and responsibility. She was encouraged to take part in community projects, volunteer efforts, and group initiatives that allowed her to apply her skills and creativity. These experiences not only built her confidence, but also taught her the importance of teamwork, empathy, and perseverance. She learned that she could make a difference in the lives of others, just as someone had made a difference in hers. Through these experiences, the girl developed a strong sense of identity and purpose. She understood that her past, while painful, did not dictate her future. She embraced her resilience, her compassion, and her talents as tools to shape a life that was fulfilling, meaningful, and safe. The challenges she had faced became a foundation upon which she could build, rather than a limitation that held her back. As time passed, the girl's confidence grew, and she began to dream even bigger. She imagined a future where she could pursue her passions, continue her education, and contribute positively to society. She saw herself as capable of overcoming obstacles, advocating for herself, and supporting others in need. The sense of hope and possibility that now filled her heart was a stark contrast to the fear and despair that had dominated her early years. The girl's journey was a testament to the power of human kindness, resilience, and determination. She had endured immense hardship, faced fear and cruelty, and survived against the odds. Yet through the intervention of a compassionate individual and her own strength, she had found safety, support, and the opportunity to grow. Her story illustrated that even in the darkest circumstances, there was the potential for change, hope, and a brighter future. Ultimately, the girl emerged from her trials not only as a survivor, but as a young person with a renewed sense of purpose and direction. She learned that courage and resilience were not just about enduring hardship, but also about embracing opportunities, seeking guidance, and trusting in the possibility of positive change. Her life was no longer defined by fear or cruelty, but by hope, growth, and the realization that she could shape her own destiny. The story of her journey served as a reminder that one thoughtful choice, one act of kindness, could change the course of a life forever. It showed that resilience, courage, and hope could transform even the most challenging circumstances into opportunities for growth, healing, and empowerment. As the girl looked forward to her future, she carried with her the lessons of her past, the strength she had cultivated, and the knowledge that she was capable of building a life filled with safety, purpose, and joy.